What's good, Rush Rivals? This is Lord Tenrai, and I'm back at it with another Rush Duel Links video. This time reviewing the new mini box for Rush Duels, Heavy Metal Scream, which is coming out on the 24th of November 2023. Now I'm using Duel Links Meta to review this box. So for more information on Rush Duels and upcoming leaks and upcoming events, all of that good stuff, please check out Duel Links Meta using the address that I've got in on the screen that you can see. Without further ado, let's go straight into the box. Now, I haven't got too much time, so I'd rather just go through the URs to SRs to rares to non-rares. I've already gone through the box myself, and I'll give you my opinion on it towards the end, but we'll just start off with Go Cyclone. Now, Go Cyclone works by having no monster on the field. You get to destroy a spell or trap on the opponent's field, and if they have 3 or less monsters in the graveyard, you can draw a card. Now, this is like really good early game. I would say going turn 2, this is a very strong card. I would even argue when you're going first, it's nice to see this in your hand, especially with how back and forth Rush Duels are at the moment, with Dragius being the most popular monster in play. You regularly go into the following turn with pretty much no board available to you. This allows you to use this card to blow up back row. Now, currently, with the first box, our only real back row to worry about was Phantom Bind, but with this box and with the bundles that I'm going to showcase, that will all change. I do think this card will come up. I'm a bit surprised that it's in the game this early, since it is a common staple seen now in the OCG Rush Duels. Does this mean that Hammer Crush will get phased out? I don't think so. I think the Hammer Crush deal skill is still quite good. And also it has less restriction on it. It just requires you to discard a card from your hand, which is, you know, not better than a requirement such as no monsters on your field. However, having no monsters on your field can be quite restrictive if the opponent decides to play around Go Cyclone by leaving a monster on the field, which then has its own pros and cons, right? I do think we'll see this card a lot. I highly recommend getting this 2 to 3 copies. I think longevity, you will see this a lot. It will be very similar to Galaxy Cyclone in Duel Links, where even today we see that card in play, and I think that card has been out for nearly 5 years. So yeah, pick these up ASAP. Now, Ancient Arise. This card I'm kind of excited about, especially with the skill. At first, I thought it was not going to be that good because I don't see why you would use this in Dragonic Resonance, but you don't. You use this in the new skill that's coming out on the 24th, which is Ancient Forces, which I'll go through in just a moment. This card reads that if you send the top card of your deck to the graveyard, you can gain 600 attack on this card to the end of the turn, and then if you have Clear Ice and Burning Blaze Dragon in your graveyard, you shuffle in both, and if you do, you destroy one face-up monster with 1500 or less attack on the opponent's field, which means that you are popping Dragius. That really is all that means. I mean, you can also pop 7 roads, any of the problematic cards, but really, this is out in Dragius, right? This is like a very strong effect if you can get the second part to go off. If not, this is like, something to beat over, in the Dragon Mirror. You go in with 3k over their Dragius. However, the Dragonic Resonance skill already lets you boost up Earth monsters, right? It lets you boost up Earth monsters to get over Dragius, which is why the skill, well, partly why the skill is so good, right? So why would you use this over the current skill that we have? Well, that's because you use it with Ancient Forces. This skill reads that it can only be used if the monsters in your deck are with 1400 or more attack in your deck are Dragon type, right? So you can only have Dragon monsters with 1400 or more attack in your deck. So you can still use Thunder, which is great because you can use Thunder to discard Ice and Blaze Dragons, right? But anyway, the effect is as follows. one face-up level 6 or water attribute dragon type effect monster on your field gains 1000 attack until the end of this turn. Then you can send one level 6 or fire attribute dragon type monster from your deck to your graveyard. This is perfect because, as I'll go into in just a second, if I scroll down to Ice and Blaze Dragon, these guys are coming in at 1800, which means, and 1600 respectively, right? That means that both of these monsters, if you can get one on the field, will come up to about 28 to 26, right? Which means that you're already beating over a Dragius regardless, right? But you're also getting one of them in the graveyard so that you can use the ability of a Rise Dragon later on in the duel to just start popping stuff left, right, and center, right? And it allows you to shuffle your deck and get rid of these cards. I imagine that you'll only be playing one Burning Blaze and 2 to 3 clear Ice Dragons, because this card doesn't really have a place in the meta right now. All it does is destroy a field spell, and the only field spell, as far as I'm aware of, is Forest, which is just, there's nothing to be worried about, right? However, Clear Ice can shuffle in vanilla Aqua monsters, which will come up if you're playing against Bubble Era, right? Which like I've mentioned before, I think is one of the best decks in the game right now, right? So I think you'll be playing 2 to 3 Ice and 1 Blaze. Overall, though, I like the skill. I don't know if it's going to be better than Dragonic Resonance. I think the monster lineup for Earth Dragons is really strong, and then in conjunction with the skill, it just makes stuff like Dragonic Pressure so good, right? But I can appreciate that Konami are trying to make this monster have a home with its, Ice and Blaze counterparts. Only time will tell. I mean, I'm looking forward to making a deck with this anyway. Then we have Bender Break, the Conqueror. It says here, if the number of monsters or face-up monsters on your opponent's field and the number of spell and trap cards on your field are the same, and it has to be the same, right? It has to be the same. Send up to 3 spell and trap cards from your field to the graveyard. Then, one face-up monster on your opponent's field loses attack and defense up to the number of cards sent times 1000. Now, the booty on this thing being 25 is good, right? This kind of gives Beastcasters, which were never really a thing before, but will be a thing with Bender Break, and Beast Summoner, which I'll get to. It allows you to play a bit more defensively turn 1 if you really have to, right? If you need to clear up your hand, chances are you won't, but at least you have the option to, right? However, the problem that I have with this card is that, the face-up monsters on your opponent's field and the number of spell and trap cards on your field have to be the same. And as good as the new spell and traps are, mostly traps obviously, but I'll come to that, I don't know if you're going to be able to send or meet that requirement consistently, right? I think I will try a Beastcaster's deck as well, especially if it's performing well, but I just find that this effect is a bit underwhelming. There's a massive restriction to it, and I just think it's going to be hard to pull off. But if you can get it to pull off, you are outing a lot of monsters with this. Dragius obviously being one of them, because you'll just beat right over it, so keep an eye out on that. I just think that Vault Condor is just a little bit better than Bender Break. Finally, we have Royal Rebels Heavy Metal. This will be a core part of the Roa deck. You are basically getting free of this. It doesn't matter, right? At least with the others. If you're playing the Ancient Forces version of the Dragons, you could probably get away with playing 2 of these. With Bender Break, once again, probably 2 of. Ghost Cyclone, like I said, 2 or 3. And then this card is like, you have to play 3 of, because you need to be able to have the monster count in the Royal Rebels deck, and there isn't a ton of Royal Rebel cards at the moment, which makes that a bit of an issue. So you need this at 3, right? Let's see if it's any good. During a turn, you normal summon this card by attributing a level 5 or higher monster. You can choose one face-up level 8 or lower monster on the opponent's field, and this card gains attack equal to that monster's attack until the end of this turn. And then it says destroy that monster, right? This is like very, very solid. However, to have the card economy to be able to tribute a level 5 will be hard. with the event at the moment, Palace Gargoyle does make that easier, but you know, do you really want to run Palace Gargoyle? I think you kind of have to at the moment, otherwise you're basically going to tribute over a Summoned Skull. Yeah, it is what it is, right? I think it's a good card. I think that from what I remember, you're playing this no matter how late in the game War Rebels are at, but yeah, we kind of just need a bit more Royal Rebel card card pool for this to be good. Seraph of Darkness. This card is very, very strong in my opinion. If you have a face-up level 5 or higher dark attribute monster on your field, you just pay 500 life points, and then you can change a face-up level 8 or lower from face-up attack position. Sorry, you can change the position of a face-up level 8 or lower monster on your opponent's field to face-up attack position or face-down defense position, right? Which is excellent because it allows you to get over problematic cards. Yeah, this is very, very, very good card, I would argue. I think that you will definitely see it as a tech card. There are, lots of dark attribute monsters in the game, so you can easily facilitate the effect requirement. And yeah, it's just a very decent tech card that you can use instead of paying, for example, Thunder by discarding cards, stuff like that. You can just pay your life points, which is no big deal, right? It's just a little bit restrictive on the attribute, but like I said, there are lots of dark attribute monsters in the game right now for you to use this. So yeah, Seraph of Darkness, very, very good. Piercing Samurai is kind of like, eh. I mean, you are going to see it in warrior decks, right? It's just the way it is. But it's a little bit underwhelming, if I'm being honest with you. It reads, if you have 3 face-up monsters in your field, send the top card of your deck to the graveyard, and you choose a warrior-type monster, and then you basically, that warrior will do piercing damage. Nothing to really write home about, but, you will see it come up because ideally you want to be able to put Yami Ruler into attack position with Bonded Bowing, and then you'll be able to use Piercing Samurai to deal piercing damage. Moving on to Giftaris, this is like one of the highlight cards in my opinion because this really gets the ball rolling with psychics. This is a level 7, so you need 2 tributes. You'll have to send the top card of your deck to the graveyard. Then this card gains attack equal to the number of other face-up psychic type monsters on your field times 400 until the end of the turn. Now, I would argue that you're going to see this as the other 2 tribute psychic monster that we currently have. This card gets freaking huge, and it doesn't require you to spend tons and tons of life points to get ahead, meaning that I would argue that this has as much of a home as Prima Katana does in a pure psychic build. I would very much say you're running 2 to 3 copies of this. In fact, I mean, in my opinion, you're just running 3 copies of this. I think it's that good. Especially, being able to get up to a total of 36 because it will include itself. So, it will not include itself because it's the number of other face-ups, right? So it will get as high as 32. So, which is still nothing to shake a stick at, right? It's very, very solid. I would argue you're going to see probably lots of 3-ofs in pure psychic builds. Dark Water Battle Sash, when an opponent's monster declares an attack on a face-up warrior monster, so basically if they attack into Yami Ruler because they want to be able to actually play Yu-Gi-Oh! The attacking monster loses 400 until the end of the turn. Then if you have a face-up level 8 or higher, Yami Ruler, you can destroy a spell or trap on the opponent's field. This second part, I think it will come up, especially because you have to set your spell and traps before you go into battle in Rush Duel. So, the problem trap cards that you're gonna read later on in this video, I think that this will be able to deal with them quite well, especially if you draw into a Yami Ruler or a Kime Ruler early on into the duel. Speedy Performer, if your opponent has a monster on their field, send a top card of your deck to the graveyard, and then 1 face-up monster on your field gains 400 attack. This is just another psychic to fill out the deck. I don't think it's incredible. I do think that it's decent that you're able to, boost a little bit more, and it doesn't require life points. Which before, psychics were just like lower life points pretty much to 0. They were basically killing themselves. So it's good to see that we have other psychic type cards that do not require you to just burn all of the life points away. But 400 attack, not a huge boost. I still think you'll see it being used though. You know, you can boost a big tribute monster and then tribute over this afterwards. So yeah, I think that you'll see this probably at 2 copies, potentially 3. Music Priestess Recital. Basically, if you have one monster left on your field and an opponent is able to conduct an attack, you negate that attack. This is like very, very good. I would argue probably the best trap in the box. I mean, we'll go to the other one soon, but this trap is very solid. It basically gives you a chance to save a monster so that you can obviously rebuild onto your next turn. And I think decks like pure spellcasters really needed this, because the power ceiling for those decks, they shoot up on your turn, but then on the opponent's turn, usually your whole board is getting wiped. So I think for that reason, I would argue that Music Priestess's Recital is very, very good for those decks, and I think that you'll just see it across the board in general. Yeah, very, very solid card. It will probably get power creeped at some point, but I think for early Rush Duel Links, it's, you know, a very, very solid card. Absolutely. Right, here we go. Royal Rebels Rocker. Basically, this allows you to add a level 6 or higher Fiend type monster from your graveyard to your hand, but you won't be able to attack directly this turn. I mean, that's mostly fine anyway. You want to be able to reduce the opponent's monsters down to 0 attack with you know, Rebels Heavy Metal anyway. So, you know, you're going to be able to, you know, get around the no direct attack requirement that the card reads. Beast Summoner. If your opponent has a face-up level 6 or higher monster on their field, you can send this face-up card from your field to the graveyard, and then you can special summon a level 7 or lower Beast Warrior, or Winged Beast monster from your hand to your field face-up. So, boom, right there. That's already synergy with Bender Break. I believe that is also synergy with Volt Condor. So, double check. Yeah, level 7. So that is like instant synergy with Volt Condor and Bender Break. And I think that later on in Rush Duel's life, I think there's a lot of, you know, Beast, Winged Beast, and Beast Warrior monsters that are very, very good at level 7 or lower that you'll be able to tribute summon with this, or sorry, special summon with this. So this is definitely a free of if you're playing Beast Casters, and I would argue that in terms of a longer investment, that you might see this card come up a lot more in the future as well. Black Dragon's Chick. This card, basically you tribute this card, and then you can special summon Red Eyes Black Dragon from your hand face up to your field. Now you probably are wondering, you know, how are we going to be able to summon Red Eyes Black Dragon? We don't have it in the game right now other than a skill. We will be getting it on a bundle. Here we go, yeah, right there. Red Eyes Black Dragon, a legend card, just a one of, but all you need is one, right? So you'll be able to summon that out. So, you know, solid card. Probably going to run this at 3 of if you're running a Red Eyes deck. And then finally, you've got Call of the Earthbound, which is a 3 of, or limit 3 of. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can choose the target for your opponent's attack. So basically, if they reduce your monster's attack points and they're going to attack into Redragius, you could change that target to, say, another target, and then that way, hopefully, you're getting the crash, right? The problem that I have with this card is that it's limit 3. I don't actually think that this card needed to be at limit 3 in order for it to be impactful to the meta. Currently, the only deck I can think of that can facilitate this card that is actually good is pure vanilla Bubble Era. And although that deck is not terrible, it did not get any support in this box whatsoever. And so I think the power ceiling of that deck will go down slightly. But if you do end up playing pure Bubble Era, then you will definitely see this card, because that deck currently has no limit 3 ofs, and I would argue that in the near future this card will probably get put to you know, to 3 basically, not to 3, but will be freed up so it doesn't take up a slot. such as your Dragius or Royal Rebel, right? I think it's a good card for early Rush Duel, but I still don't think it was necessary to limit this card. And then we'll just move on to the rares. There aren't too many that I want to discuss. I think the barrier is very, very good. It just gives you another form of interaction for you and the opponent. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can shuffle one monster from your graveyard into the deck, and then that attacking monster loses 400. Although I would say I think early game or for more matchups, it is better than Phantom Bind. But if you're going up against like pure dragons, pure warrior, then I would probably argue that Phantom Bind is better than this. But it's nice to have that versatility. I think you will probably see the barrier more than Phantom Bind, in my opinion, especially as Rush Duel moves forward and we get more cards, right? Quickly going forward, I've already talked about Ice and Blaze Dragon. You will probably see cards like Eculus, the Star Knight, in like probably the Royal Rebel deck, where you need to be able to meet the requirement to play the skill. So you've got stuff like that, and then you've also got Archfiend Summoning Flute, which you probably also need that as well. And same as Nessus the Star Knight, right? You basically playing those cards that you can meet the requirement to use the skill, right? I do think Paku Paku Chu is good. I like that it can add normal beast type monsters from your graveyard to your hand. So basically, you're probably gonna grab a Gazelle King of Mythical Beasts. That's probably the first target I can think of off the top of my head. But other than that, relatively limited card. I would argue it's a worse Seahorse carrier, but obviously it's for Beastcasters, so you'll probably see that in the Beastcasters build. And then this is also going to be something that you'll see in Beastcasters as well. If you have a face-up Beast-type monster on your field other than this card, you can send the top card of your deck to the graveyard, and then you can choose a face-up monster on your opponent's field to lose 200 attack and defense until the end of this turn. So it's kind of like a Thunder, but you don't discard from hand instead. So yeah, that will be good for Beastcasters as well. And I do think Romican Roller is a good card. I definitely think it's better than Dream Drummer. I am just not really a fan of this card. Being able to shuffle your opponent's monsters into the deck, and then if you have a normal face-up monster, you gain 500 life points. I think this is kind of limited. I mean, the best way to use this is to shuffle in the Aqua Vanilla. However, this has far more uses. If your life points are 2,000 or lower, all face-up monsters your opponent on your opponent's field will lose 500 attack and defense until the end of the turn. I think that has far more application in a duel, not just like early in early, which hopefully you won't be at 2,000 life points early in the duel, but I think that mid to late game you'll see this card come up massively for Psychics. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this card performs. Just going through, so this is just like normal monster. You might see this to facilitate the skill for Royal Rebels. King's Reward, I'm not too sold on this card. I think you still have to use it, but we'll see, right? Basically, you shuffle one level 1 Fiend type monster, it has to be a normal monster, from your graveyard into the deck, and you can destroy a level 6 or lower monster on your opponent's field, and if that's successful, your opponent draws a card and you still cannot attack directly this turn. I think it might be good in order to, board wipe for turn, and they will be drawing less on their turn. So like, I don't know, let's say like they have one card left in hand and you use King's Reward, they then have 2 cards, but then they're drawing 3 anyway. But they're drawing 3 then. But even without King's Reward, they're still drawing 4, so it doesn't really change anything. But the fact that you cannot attack directly with this card, that's the problem I have with it. And there are already too many restrictions to Royal Rebels where you can't attack directly this turn. So I don't see why you need to be able to add more of that restriction to the deck. But maybe I'm missing something. If you guys know why you would use this, please talk in the comment section below and let me know. This is just a level 1 Fiend. This is just to facilitate King's Reward and other plays. This is just another fiend for the requirement, same as before, another fiend for the requirement. I like return. I do like return in certain scenarios. So when your opponent adds a card from the graveyard to their hand, you can shuffle one random card from your opponent's hand into the deck. This basically closes down Curibot and Seahorse Carrier, but do you run this card in the hopes that you will be seeing them every single game? Potentially, right? Like if you're playing in the Gohar Rush and you're in stage 2 and you know for a fact you're going to see Curibot and Seahorse Carrier all the time, then potentially you could run up to 2 to 3 copies of return to try and reduce what the opponent can do when they're conducting their turn, right? So I think that this is kind of not slept on, but I'm on the fence about whether or not this could be good or not, right? But at least we have more interaction. I mean, in my opinion, noodle monsters are just not good yet, so I just don't think roastery is going to change anything. This is just bad, and I don't like one side reverse either. I think in theory the concept is good, but the fact that your opponent has to have 2 or more face down monsters on their field, there are scenarios where you just won't see any face down monsters. Maybe you'll just see 1 face down monster. It will ultimately depend on the opponent's hand, but the fact that you're super restrictive on this, it's a similar reason to return not being hyped about on my end. I'm kind of on the fence about this. I think if your opponent's hand is not good, then you will see this work. And then similarly, if your opponent's hand requires Curibot or Seahorse Carrier plays, you know, anything that adds from graveyard, then you will see this come up as well. But if the opponent is not doing stuff like that, like if they're playing warrior only, then this card is dead, and potentially even this card is dead, right? But yeah, that's basically the box. I mean, we also have a couple of bundles as well that I'll quickly go through. We have Widespread Ruin, which is absolutely absurd that we're getting this. It's such a good legend trap for early Rush Duel. Basically, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can destroy 1 attack position monster with the highest attack on your field. If you have 2 with 2500, for example, let's say you have double Dragius, then you can choose which Dragius is going to go to the graveyard. Very, very good trap card. You're going to see this in every single deck. So, you know, does this mean that we run more back row hate? Do we run the Hammer Crushers? Do we run the Ghost Cyclones? I would argue probably yes. And then the second card is Monster Reincarnation. This basically asks you to send a card from your hand to the graveyard, and then you can add a monster from your graveyard to your hand. So you are going -1 to be able to grab something from your graveyard, but I do think that there are... So I've been on a few Discord servers where people were just like, nah, this card's trash, it's not very good. I think in a lot of decks, this card probably isn't very good, but I think depending on what you're playing, that this card can actually unclog your hand. Particularly when you're using Seahorse Carrier and Curibot. Let's say, for example, you got Carrier in graveyard and you need it to be able to facilitate one of your level 2 tributes. So your not level 2 tributes, your 2 tribute monsters. Then you send one of them to the graveyard. Let's say you've got a Dragius and a Dian Keto. You send the Dian Keto. You grab the Carrier, and then boom, Carrier, grab the vanilla, summon the vanilla, go into Dragius, go for plays, right? So I do think that this card will come up. I think you'll be able to unclog your hand with this. Do I think that you'll see this in every single deck like Widespread Ruin? I would probably argue no. But I think that it's very nice of them to add a card like this, because it kind of gives you more versatility when conducting your plays in Rush, and not every deck is going to use this. So I think it's a unique card for the meta, especially early on as it is. And I like this card being included a lot more than Widespread Ruin. I think that we got this a little bit too early, and I think Trap Hole would have been a lot more of a safer card to add. There isn't really a ton of counterplay to this. Yeah, that's all I'll mention about that. And then the leaks, like I said, we're getting like Red Eyes Black Dragon, and then currently we are having the Roa Cassidy event going on right now. So, you know, work hard on it, get your ×3 Growl, get your ×3 Gargoyle, because chances are you're going to be using every single one of them just to be able to play Royal Rebels come 24th of November. And that is pretty much the box. Do I think this improves Rush Duel Links? Absolutely. I mean, the biggest concern of mine was the fact that we don't have a lot of interaction on, on your opponent's turn. But now that we have more traps, we have more interaction, so that's been fixed. I don't think adding Ghost Cyclone was a good idea, but it is what it is. And there are still a couple of cards that I'm looking at with like raised eyebrows. Like, I still don't think this should be limited to 3, but the fact that we have it does mean that other decks that don't run limit 3 cards means that they have a trap that they can use, a battle trap that they can use. And then other than that, I mean, you got Barrier, and then you got some interesting tech cards that might see play in Return and One Side Reverse. Although I would argue that in the latter, this is like far more restrictive. At least this card allows you to hit concurrent meta decks. Not every single time. It depends if they go for Seahorse Carrier plays. It depends if they have the out with Hammer Crush or Ghost Cyclone. But if they do not and they go for their Graveyard Retrieval plays, then you can punish them. And potentially you're punishing them for game, because if you shuffle in a Dragius randomly, right, like pray to Umbasa, and you get the, shuffling Dragius, then potentially they could just scoop and then you have game. But yeah, that's it for the review on the box. Let me know how I did in the comments below, and let me know your thoughts and opinion on the cards. I'm very much looking forward to the box. I'm very much looking forward to making a Beastcasters deck with Bender Break and Voltic Condor. I'm looking forward to trying the new Dragon stuff with Ancient Arise Dragon with the new skill. Royal Rebels will be interesting to make. I do hope that that we can make it a good deck, but the card pool is making me a little bit concerned. And then finally, I think Psychics are looking very, very good. They are getting a new skill as well coming on release day, 24th. I think it's this one here where you can add Prima Katana and Esperade. This is kind of nuts. This card is like very, very nutty. Don't get me wrong, the requirements are a little bit steep. You have to have 1,000 or less life points, but you can potentially get lethal, because you would boost with Prima, then you would activate Esperade, and then you would swing once and then swing directly for the second attack, meaning that you're not going to be held back by the direct attack only once, right? And then depending on your opponent's field, you're going to be huge with Prima. Like, you could potentially be 31 on Prima, and then you could also be 28, 31, 34 on Esperade. However, chances are we'll probably just use the skill that we have at the moment called Psychic Drive, which is a very good skill in its own right. The problem that Psychics had was that their card pool was probably the worst card pool in the game, and now that their card pool is a lot better with Giftarist and all the other cards that I mentioned, I think that the deck is looking a lot stronger, and it will only get better, right? Especially when we get Esperade as a normal card that you can just splash in your deck. Anyway, with all that being said, this is Lord Tenwai signing off. Peace, stay safe. I hope you guys enjoyed the new box as much as I will, and I will be seeing you guys on the battlefield come the 24th of November. Stay safe.